Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Happy Thursday. It's garbage day for me around here. And you know
in
what?
more
Speaking
ways
of
than
garbage,
one.
speaking of garbage,
Yes.
have you seen the news?
Yeah, you started our conversation off a little while ago before the show started with something interesting. And I had missed it. I had not seen it, although I have seen it since.
It ticked me off. I was going to use a P word, but I'll be nice.
It was a letter that Secretary of Education Linda McMahon sent to Harvard, and the response back to Secretary McMahon, which I thought was unbelievable. You can pick it up from there, Bill. Go ahead.
Well, the story reads because somebody, a lefty loon friend, said, this is the kind of petty attacks that I love to see because, and I said, what? And I'm looking at this letter all corrected, and I read it, and I'm going, well, it's a style of communication. I mean, there wasn't anything terribly wrong with it, and they were just making their point. She was about, you want these funds, here's what you got to do in no uncertain terms.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk grammatically correct, and sometimes when you communicate, and I'm saying, the old English Cambridge way of talking on letters, how you have to talk in person, I'll get slapped silly for that, but that's what she did. So what they do is they take it with a red pen and mark it up and write it up, and it's like, oh, come on.
Well, you know what I think is
Really?
funny, Bill? What's really funny is that we live in this new world of text messages and short little scripts and emojis and abbreviations, and some of those things have worked their way into writing styles and things like that, and nobody has any complaint about that. But when a letter comes from the Secretary of Education to Harvard, they get out their red pen like it's an exercise for English class, and they start correcting her. By the way, if you look at the markup, it's kind of funny. You know, it's like these people, have they got nothing better to do with their time at Harvard than to start making grammatical corrections on the letter from the Department of Education?
Yeah. Well, this thing is all over the news. It was on the television news. You know, I've heard people talking about it. It's been commentated on. There's been commentary, I should say, on it. I don't want to be verbally corrected.
Yeah, I'll have to break out my red pen.
Yeah, you know, and scribble all over my face. You know, but either way, it's been all over the place in social media. It's been put up. You know, I'd love to see, people that posted, hey, did you see what they did?
Yeah.
Well, let me get my red pen out here and correct that and send that, that post back to you. But they did this. It is petty, but for someone to do that and applaud it, you are basically, you're making a statement. It's a very bold statement. It says, excuse me, but I'm better than you.
I'm from
You are beneath me.
Harvard.
And that is what they are doing. You can't be in charge because you don't have my standing and education. Well, let me tell you about your standing and education.
Right here.
Bend over, turn around,
No,
and I'll show you where to put it.
No. Sometimes you have to grab a hold of Bill before he gets a little crazy.
No. Hey, Gutfeld did it too. We'll go into that later.
Oh,
but,
I get. That's about another topic though. That's about Biden, which I think is interesting. We're on a roll today. We had we had a conversation before the show started, and we both agreed that it's one of those kind of days. If you were into astrology, I think they would say this is a day in retrograde or something like that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question.
What?
And this is not to you, Jim. It's
Sure.
well, you listening right now. Have you ever just got the feeling that something is not right in the world? I mean, sure, you look at the news, things aren't right.
Mm-hmm.
In the world, all over the place.
Awful.
If you listen to the left, it's all Trump's fault. Everything is Trump's fault.
Yeah.
But I mean, everything from my health, it's good.
Yeah.
My finances are good.
Mm-hmm.
But I question everything, right now, today, and for the past few days. It's like that feeling that the carpet is going to be pulled out from under you, at any moment, and you can't put your finger on
It's
what
funny
it
you should
is.
say that. I haven't got the audio or the video, but I saw it this morning. Joe Rogan was talking about a comedian who was doing a stand-up routine about how she was vaccinated. Have you seen this bit? And she gets up there. She gets up there and she talks about bragging about all the shots and all the vaccines she got and all the wonderful things. And she talks about, I've gotten this, I've gotten that, and I'm going to be healthier than can be. And she collapses on stage. She bang. I mean, she didn't die, but she blacked out and she passed out and fractured her skull. This comedian. I mean, it was a serious fall. She just went down like a sack of potatoes.
Sometime during the show, I'm going to text you something I didn't text you yesterday. I meant to, but I got caught up in the day of doing everything I had to do. But it is a story. I think the guy's British that delivers it. But either way, the information is, and it's vetted information. There's a problem with the jab, and you're going to get mad about this, but I think you probably got the placebo. But now the research is in, and the jab, there are people dying, and it's related to the jab, and it's gotten to epidemic proportions. And even at places like, I think it was MIT and other big universities and colleges with medical studies, they're going, this could get to epidemic proportions that could be life-threatening globally. In other words, near extinction. That this jab that they forced everybody to get could be wiping out people, and it's doing it now in record numbers.
I have no idea what I got. I got 2 shots, and I told you many times on the show, Bill, it was I think the biggest mistake I've made in my life. Well, it was getting that vaccination.
Now, if you're like me and you're sitting there, well, I didn't get the shot, thank God. I thought about it. I stand in front of people and talk to them that did get the shot. Are they breathing something out that maybe I can still pick up? Have you seen the chemtrails? They were going on during the time of the jab. Maybe they mass inoculated everybody, and the people who are dying got a double dose.
How about those drones over New Jersey? Were they spraying anything? And they were only out at nighttime. They only saw them at night.
Yeah, this is something to worry about because, we in our conspiracy thing the other day, we talked about a deep, deep, deep state. I mean, I'm talking down, below hell state, but, that's out there controlling things. The World Economic Organization that's going, we need to get it down to 500 million people. Well, maybe their little number is out of control. They were doing it before our very eyes. Because usually when somebody talks about something, I'm thinking I need to go, I'm getting near 40. I'm getting a little middle-aged crazy. I'm thinking about that Porsche. Well, that means you've already gone to the dealership, looked at it, filled out the credit app, or gave them your bank account information, and you're just waiting for them to call you up and say, your Porsche is ready, sir. Come and get it, I'm just saying a lot of times it's that way. So with them talking about it, they've already implemented.
Hey, before we forget, we should remind you, if you get a moment, like and share our program, okay? There's a lot to talk about today. We have just started, and that letter is amazing. If you get a moment, folks, do a Google search, Secretary of Education letter to Harvard corrections, and it'll come back in the search, and you'll see what we were talking about.
And if it makes you mad, congratulations, you're okay. You're a normal person. If now you might laugh at it, just the humor in it itself. But if you're going, well, that's right, you're a lefty, probably. Good chance anyway. Yeah. Or you need to go see somebody about your mental condition.
Yesterday we talked about the Epstein files. And we said, what's going on with that? And I played for you a cut, and I'm going to play it again as a reminder right now. James Comer was talking about the Epstein files a couple of days ago. Listen carefully. This is James Comer on an interview, and it was a little disturbing.
What's next? I mean, we did a little bit of a preview on the Epstein files, obviously. That's like finding a unicorn in Washington, D.C. You have come on and talked about that on this program. Just for the sake of transparency, which is very big for you. And so, in closing, any motion on that, any movement on that? We hear that there's a timeline now.
I hope James has the Epstein files, because I don't think the Department of Justice has them, or at least the Attorney General does not have them, or she would have turned them over. The President ordered them released. The Attorney General ordered them released. We all know they have not been released. And one of my biggest fears that I had, and I expressed this with Kash Patel and a lot of people, Stephen Miller, and a lot of people going into the new administration, I'm like, I hope they're not shredding documents right now. This was a few weeks before the transition. I said, I hope they're not shredding documents. But you all need to go on that first day and try to get all this stuff released, because, my fear is from what I've dealt with in investigations and in communication with this deep state apparatus, is they're probably in there shredding documents as we speak. So hopefully someone has a copy of that. And I hope we find out, because our task force has done everything, led by Anna Paulina Luna. You had her on your show many times. I mean, she's relentless. She's persistent. She's pretty frustrated right now that these files haven't been released, even though the President and the Attorney General have ordered them released. But, it's like I told Anna the same thing I told Patel and everybody else. I'm like, you assume that somebody in the deep state said, okay, we'll just put these in a file back here, this incriminating evidence on everybody, and maybe the next administration can do whatever they want to do with it. That's unfortunately the way it's supposed to work, but hasn't worked with this deep state.
So they're just going to let the incriminating evidence sit there smoldering. That could put them all in prison.
Right? I wish they should. That's what they're supposed to do. But you and I have dealt with them, Benny. You've covered the deep state as well as anyone. I mean, they cover their tracks. And it's just hard for me to believe they're going to leave incriminating evidence if the government was involved. If the government wasn't involved, I don't think they would have any reason to protect Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton. They're never going to be elected anything again. I don't think they would have any reason to protect Bill Gates or anybody else. The concern I've always had about the Epstein file was the government involved. Did the government know? Was the government using Epstein and the videos to blackmail the most influential people around the world? If that's the case, then they knew there were victims of sex crimes there, and they did nothing. So that's the concern I have. If the government covers this up, I don't believe it's because of any love affair or affection for the Clinton family. Just like I never believed they were hiding and covering for the Bidens because they loved Joe Biden. It was because they hated Donald Trump, and they didn't want their agencies to be disrupted. The same thing with the Epstein files. I don't know this, but my concern is that the government may have known a lot more and may have been an active participant, maybe with the intentions of intelligence gathering. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I don't think the American people would be okay if the government knew that crimes against young women were occurring, and yet they did nothing to intervene.
That's James Comer, and he questions as to whether the files even exist anymore. Well, yesterday, walking down the White House driveway after going to a function, I think it was a press conference, Pam Bondi was stopped by some reporters, and she was asked about the Epstein files. Listen.
James Comer said yesterday that all the Epstein files are missing. They still haven't heard from you.
No, the FBI, they're reviewing, there are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going through that. I haven't seen that statement, but I'll call him later and find out.
Okay, that was Pam Bondi yesterday. Now, I was thinking, we don't need the actual files. We don't need word by word, play by play, even video by video. All we need is a list of the participants, which I would think, Bill, that if they've got that, they could sit down. Heck, you probably could have AI put together a list of people who are in those files, who participated, who visited the island. And we don't have to know the victims' names. I don't want to see, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to see pictures or videos of what happened at Epstein Island. I just want to know what influential people were out there, screwing around with underage children and ruining their lives. Not the participants' lives, the children's lives.
I may do a search on that later today. O'Keefe, the media group. Do you see that video that they did? Apparently,
yeah.
What's his name?
Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew, John Bryant, who was his former advisor. Mm-hmm. Apparently, a pretty young lady came along, saddled up to him and got his attention. They had dinner and drinks, and he had a lot of drinks, and he spilled a lot of beans. So about Andrew and his dalliances.
But we already knew that.
Yeah,
we already knew that Prince Andrew was a pervert. He's been on the outs now for 3 or 4 years now from the royalty
because of it. Yeah,
yeah, because of it.
Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that they dropped that. The timing is interesting, and it dots I's and crosses T's. But yeah, she didn't sound like she was dancing away from the subject. She didn't hesitate, so that's reassuring. What's not reassuring is it's taking so long, because the longer it goes, the more time somebody has got to screw with certain things. Because do I trust everybody? And I'm sure you don't either. Everybody in the FBI today? Nope, I sure don't. I think there's still people there that any chance they got.
Big time.
Yeah, they'll screw something up.
Yeah, I think that every day Trump has only got the remainder of this term, which right now seems like a long time, 3 years, three and three-quarter years. It's not. It'll be gone like that. I mean, we just saw Biden being sworn in, and now he's history. Thank God. That's going to happen again to Trump. And by the way, if they can fudge the elections in the midterms, you're going to spend the last 2 years of his administration dodging impeachment charges again, because that's all the left knows how to do. Obstruct and screw around. They're doing it right now with these decisions from these unknown people called district court judges. Mm-hmm. I mean, these guys you don't know. If these guys had coffee with you wouldn't know who they are. And yet they're stopping the executive branch from performing its duties. The duties, by the way, that 77 million people put them in that office to do. I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's disgusting. And I listened to President Trump during his press conferences in the afternoon, and he's saying the right things in that he's not coming out sounding like a revolutionary. He's saying things, we'll abide by the rules of law, and we'll wait for the court's decision. All of these things, and that's all well and good. But by him doing that, it also discourages a lot of his followers who expected some slam-bam action, if you know what I mean. Look, am I
do it though?
Am I happy with what he's done so far? Yes. I love the fact he's trying to. They call him Bill. They call him Hitler. They call him a dictator and a fascist. Yet, for the past 100 days, he's been doing everything he can to stop wars. When did you ever see Hitler try to stop a war? Never. I mean, he is an agent of peace right now, and the left, if anything, is the fascistic part of this narrative. They're the people who are trying to screw up this government intentionally. They're the ones who are causing demonstrations on college campuses. They're all there. That's what fascists do. Do you remember the riots? You don't remember them because you weren't here, but I mean, if you look in history books, back in the 30s, the revolutionary movement in Germany were the Nazis. They were burning the books, and they were causing people to. They had the brown shirts. They were causing demonstrations and death and evil and corruption. They were disturbing the norm. That was what they do. By the way, there's a video out. I'm not going to play it. I won't give them the time of friggin' day, all right? But Temple University students, pro-Hamas students at Temple, talking about how their real purpose in these demonstrations is to take down the United States of America and capitalism. evil capitalism. I mean, these are the guys who 5 years ago were playing in Little League.
You take down capitalism. What do you want to put in its place?
They want to put, I'll tell you what they want. They want to put in Sharia law. They want to put in, because most of these kids were either they were here on visas or they were from families who were here recently, okay, Middle Eastern families who were here recently. I don't know what the actual background is, but they don't like what we are here, but they'll be damned if they'll get on an airplane and go over there and live. They want to screw us up and stay here, but they don't want to get on an airplane. Their problems could be solved in a plane ticket. You get on the damn plane, and you fly back to the Middle East or to the Middle East, and you'll be surrounded by people of like mind. But no, these people don't want that.
Why does the left want to bring these people in to tear down America? What in God's name could be their real agenda? I mean, I see people that are on the left. I fought and served for this country. Well, thanks, but don't do it again, because we don't need you if you're sitting there wanting to open the borders, bring in these people that don't care about the country, don't salute our flag, they burn it, they kill people. Why? What do you want them here for?
I can tell you one thing, all right? Please, let's get rid of one thing right off the bat. I was in the service, and nothing of any merit, but I was surrounded by all types of different kind of people, all right? Just because you put the uniform on doesn't make you Joe Patriot, all right? There are people who get into the military, get drafted, or they even join by mistake. They think, I'll go, and they realize, I got into this, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, don't think that every guy who wears a uniform, just because we've gotten into this routine now, thank you for your service, thank you for your service. Some of these guys weren't very good at what they did. And we have got to start thinking like we've gotten into this routine of being how do I say, almost mechanical in how we do stuff. Oh, you see a guy
robotic,
in a uniform? Robotic. You see somebody in a uniform? Thank you, sir. This guy could have been coming out of a stockade somewhere after having been in prison for 3 or 4 months in the military. But you see him in a uniform, and you think, he's got to be a good guy. They're people. They're people. There are great soldiers. There are patriotic soldiers. There are people who deserve more respect than we could possibly give them. And then there are schmucks, okay? And so I could go on and on. I think that we are going to, you talked about something a little while ago. I thought it's interesting. I was thinking about it while you were talking. You said you had this feeling that something was up, the hammer was about to fall. Something was about to drop. And the answer is yes, I feel the same way. I feel, here's what I worry about right now, that nobody's making a big deal out of. I worry desperately about what's happening in India and Pakistan. You say, what the hell how does that affect you? I think if there's ever going to be a nuclear war breakout, it's going to be with countries who don't think of it quite as seriously as we do. Russia, you always felt that they were aware of the seriousness and the gravity of using nuclear weapons. I look at Pakistan and India, I don't get that feeling. They might just toss a few just to see whether they work, if you know what I mean.
I think there's a generation. Now, I wasn't around when the nuclear bomb was first dropped or invented. I remember, going to school, late 60s, early 70s, you had the duck and cover, all that stuff. But then that kind of faded away too, because it became everyday thing. The generation after me, and pretty much even in mine, we didn't really quite grasp what it really is. I did, because I kind of looked at it, and probably, a few people did too, but I don't think they understand what it is. They don't really get it, and they see too many Marvel movies or whatever movies where blowing up things means nothing. Heck, you can come back in the next episode. Who knows? So they want to see what it does.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. I think that we have been desensitized by games like Call of Duty or early years ago Medal of Honor, all these what they call first-person shooter games on video where you can literally log in, get your weapon, you can blow things up and kill people and see all the gore and the blood, and instantaneously be respawned and start again. You lose the reality of it. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It makes you think, and I hate to say this, in some ways I think a lot of these shootings, school shootings and stuff like that, I think that the shooters are out of touch with reality. They're not. They're doing stuff, not realizing the permanence of what they're doing. That's what I'm trying to say. They grab their guns and off they go, and they start shooting people. And I almost think that some of these people expect that their victims are going to pop up and come at them again. I don't know whether they understand the permanence and the seriousness of what they're doing. It's a relatively new phenomenon, although I did read a story about one of the first mass school shootings was out, I believe, in Minnesota in 1925. So they had their problems even back then. But
it's been around for a while.
Yeah, we could go on and on. I wanted to also talk about Kash Patel. He was the subject of a mean-spirited and dishonest questioning during a committee meeting. I guess it was on Wednesday.
Madeline Dean?
Yeah, she decided to she was going to put Kash Patel in his place, and she tried. It didn't work.
Agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well, you
want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the book because there's no enemies list on that book. There are people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people, and they were rightly called out. And you should give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6th insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times. And you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury. Tell the American people how I broke the law and committed a felony. Have the audacity to actually put the facts forward instead of lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that
the answer is you're failing, not me.
I will play my time.
Go ahead.
She thought she had a time and a moment where she could pin Kash Patel. It was her opportunity. By the way, I don't listen to Stu Peters, but I have in the past heard of his podcast and listened a couple of times. And all he is he's a staunch conservative. All right, he's a staunch, and he does venture into the conspiracy possibility on time and again. But he doesn't break any laws, folks. And he's not like a communist or a Nazi, but she makes this out like he's from another planet. So if Kash Patel happened to be on his program as a guest, all the more to it. Better, good for him. So what? He didn't break any laws or do anything wrong. But this dean this liberal dean, she makes it sound like that Kash Patel was sitting with the devil. So I don't listen to Stu Peters' program, but a lot of people do, and they're not bad people. They just like what he has to say. In the meantime, I'll bet you dollars to donuts that Representative Dean is a regular viewer of MSNBC, and that is ridiculously leftist. That is probably far more of a propaganda tool than Stu Peters' podcast, and she has no problem with that because it's the right side of the aisle to be listening to, as far as she's concerned.
Mm-hmm. Well, she made sure that she let you know that she was on the impeachment from
Oh yeah,
when they did it. But you had a Democratic Congress. All the decks were stacked in her favor to sit there and be the bully that she was then, because nobody was there to stop her. You were not allowed to sit there and bring in your own witnesses. You're not allowed to even talk. They'll cut your mic off so that she could get her point. She had a hard time with this because she thought she was going to railroad in with her little gotcha thing that was contrived anyway. Whatever that line was, that we know absolutely that you reasonably did. In other words, we know absolutely nothing.
Look at the January 6th committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a sham. To anybody who paid an iota of attention,
but they still talk about it.
They talk about it like it was legitimate, and it was. Well, they had two Republicans who were handpicked when Jim Jordan was recommended by the Speaker to be on that panel. Not the Speaker at the time; it was the leader of the House for the Republicans. They turned that down. Pelosi said, "No, that's too much of an honest guy. Let's put Liz Cheney there. That would be good, or Adam Kinzinger. That would be good. We'll put those two people there. They were nothing more than Democrats, wolves in sheep's clothing. Mm-hmm. That's what they were, and the rest was a panel of sycophant leftists who read a script and made sure they hired. Bill, do you remember this? They hired a producer from ABC to produce the hearings to give it a Hollywood value so that it would be more
creditable.
Exactly. More creditable. And it wasn't. It didn't work. People looked at it like the sham that it was. And by the way, did you catch the line in that little conversation we just played where she said, "At what time can I expect people to be knocking on my door?" And I think he answered basically by saying, well, only people who have broken the law and violated their oath should be worried about that happening. Meaning, he didn't come out and say there'll be nobody knocking on your door. He said if you didn't do anything wrong, if you didn't violate your oath, you have nothing to worry about. If she's worried, maybe she has reason to be worried.
Yeah. The only thing he should have done is, if you didn't violate your oath, you have nothing to worry about. Then I would have looked at my watch and said, you might want to get your affairs in order.
Yes. You're a little more direct. You're a little more to the point. Anyway, should we remind everybody at this point, if you want to spread the word about the show, we'd appreciate it. We would appreciate you liking and sharing our show, because that's basically how we get the word out.
Yeah, it's very important, especially since we changed platforms. It's like starting over again.
Yep.
And if you could, make sure that you at least share it with one or two friends and ask them if they like it to share it, because, as we change platforms, the one thing we did was turn off the old spigot. And with the new spigot turned on, it's a whole new thing. So like and share.
Some people don't realize what we're talking about when we say we changed platforms. We've gone from one podcasting operator to a new one, and we have monetized, meaning we have some commercials. You may hear some commercials in this program. You may have just heard one a second or two ago. That was a necessary evil. But in doing so, I think it's like Bill said, it's like we went back to zero. After three and a half years, it's like We notified our original podcaster we would be leaving, and they turned off their spigot. And we went to our new
But they
guy.
take the money still.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They're still cashing your check, Bill. And then we go to our new podcaster, and they just turn the spigot on like we're a brand new customer. So it is a strange situation we're in right now. So please tell your friends about the show. We would deeply appreciate it. It would help us to get our audience back. Interesting thing, Elon Musk was on an interview, a podcast with Ted Cruz. I don't know whether you saw this. And they were talking about some corruption that they found recently with DOGE. They had these credit cards, government credit cards. They issue them to. I think they. Looking at the list, it looks like they give these credit cards to anybody who works in government. I mean, you could be a janitor at the FBI building. Here's your credit card. Have a good day. I mean, and some of these credit cards have a monthly balance of $10,000. You can go up to $10,000 a month with some of these credit cards. I mean, apparently it's like no questions asked.
Who pays for it? Who pays for it?
Well, you do, Bill.
Okay, I was going to. They don't pay for it.
No. It's you and me. The government pays for it.
Basically, this is kind of like that credit card is kind of like a food card that you can spend on anything that you give to the people that need it. Surely in the government, I mean, janitors probably make $35-50 an hour.
Well, I mean, let's say you make, hypothetically, as an employee for a branch of government, say you make $60,000 or $70,000 a year. Good salary.
Well, you need $10,000 a month then.
And then you give $10,000 credit card to them a month. That means that I guess they have no one to answer to. You just use the card when you see a need.
So you can buy food, you can buy furniture, you can buy
a brand new car.
You could, or you could just go to the ATM and how much money can I take out right now and take that out?
That's true. Yeah. Well, Elon Musk was talking with Ted Cruz. Listen.
You've told me about, tell us about computer licenses in government agencies.
Yeah. So most of what DOGE is finding, you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes. Okay. It's very obvious, basic stuff. So in every government department, I say every because we've not yet found a single exception, there are far too many software licenses and media subscriptions, meaning many more software licenses and media subscriptions than there are humans in the department.
Like you were saying, like an agency with 15,000 people might have 30,000 licenses.
Yes.
And even of the 15,000 employees, a good chunk of them hadn't used the license, had never logged on or used the application.
Yes. We found entire situations of software licenses or media subscriptions where there were 0 logins.
Wow.
So it had
and yet we were paying for it.
Yes, so the government was paying for thousands of licenses of software or media subscriptions, and no one had ever logged in even once.
Or like credit cards. You found the same thing with government credit cards.
We found that there are twice as many credit cards as there are humans.
And I still
don't have a good explanation for why this is the case. And these are $10,000 limit cards. So it's a lot of money.
Is it incompetence that you're finding, or is this like the biggest money laundering scheme in the history of the world that you're finding?
Look, I think it's mostly, if you say, look, what's the waste to fraud ratio?
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's like 80% waste, 20% fraud. But you do have these sort of gray areas.
Yeah.
So, example would be, so we saw a lot of payments going out of Treasury that had no payment code and no explanation for the payment. And then we're trying to figure out what that payment is, and we'd see that, okay, that contract was supposed to be shut off, but someone forgot to shut off that contract, and so the company kept getting money.
Wow.
Now, is that waste or fraud?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, but it's sort of, you know, you're getting something you're not supposed to get.
You're not supposed to get it, but the government sent it to you, and nobody from the government asked for it back.
Not a bad deal. Nobody seems to care. Waste. He said it's an 80 to 20 waste to fraud ratio, meaning out of those, what do you say, 500,000 cards that they found? That means 100,000 cards were fraud? That's a lot of fraud, Bill.
Yeah, at 10,000 apiece. So you take 100,000, multiply by 10,000.
Ooh,
how much money is that? It's a lot.
I want one of those cards.
Well, okay, we talked about a deep state the other day, and I said money's not real. It's just a tool to control people. But in some way, shape, form, or fashion, maybe it's also with those cards a way to funnel resources to do things that they're not supposed to do.
It says DOGE says it has saved approximately $105 billion in a combination of asset sales, contract lease cancellations and renegotiations, fraud and improper payments, grant cancellations, interest savings. I mean, they're doing their job, and it's driving the deep state nuts. It really is. It's amazing. But think about that. Someone hands you a credit card and says, here's your credit card. Yeah, what's the limit on it? $10,000 a month. Okay, have a good day. Okay, now back to your desk. And then you never see that person. They don't ask you about the receipts. They don't ask you about where you spent it. They have to get a statement every month. You would think that somebody in an office somewhere would look and say, let's see, Jim Harrington got a credit card and he bought a new Lamborghini. Okay, that's fine.
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, we're in the digital age. You get a bill or a statement. It could be an electronic statement. Surely the government would be able to get electronic statements, and a computer AI could go through, and mark it and send it to the appropriate person. Got to check this out.
Well, you would think that, like, let's say hypothetically you had a card and you wanted to buy an item that was $1,500. You could probably put a notification alarm on that card of anything that's over $300. Contact us before you give them authorization.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. Somebody should have been paying attention, but I think maybe that's the problem with DC is nobody wants anybody to pay attention because they're all doing something wrong.
Well, maybe that was the reason where they had these people that were going and doing certain, I forget what department it was, but they did a lot of paperwork and things. I think it was in Social Security, and they had to go into an old mine, and they had boxes and print paper and old computers, and maybe there's a reason that they had all this old archaic stuff, because it was a way to legitimately hide the money. Well, we didn't know, because we were using antiquated systems.
Boy, this thing we were talking about a little while ago about getting a feeling that the sky is going to fall. Maybe we have reason. We're finding out all this stuff has been going on. We're just finding it out now. It's 2025.
Yeah.
Forget how much he discovered that affects maybe this year's budget, but how much waste has there been over the last 25 or 30 years? How many trillions of dollars of our money has been blown by the deep state intentionally, and no big deal. It's kind of sad. It's sad and it's upsetting at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
Joe Biden was in England. You probably saw this. He decided after the first 100 and some days of him being out of office, the perfect place for him to come out of hibernation was in England. That's right. Don't do your first interview on an American broadcasting network where your supporters, in quotes, could watch you. Do it someplace where nobody really gives a tinker's darn.
Nice.
Yeah, do it over in England. And I use tinkers because in England they know what tinkers are. But anyway, he was on, and I'm not going to do this to you. Everybody else has got a cut of Joe mumbling. And by the way, that's all the interview was well, I did this, and it was sad. But by seeing it,
I think you
again,
have to see it.
Yeah, maybe I should have found a piece of work. Maybe I'll play it tomorrow. Maybe I made a mistake on this one, because it reminds you of how you really dodged another bullet by not having him for a second term. Oh my God, I mean, this guy is just a vacant parking lot. He doesn't know what the heck he's talking about, but the dangerous thing is he had his finger on the nuclear trigger for 4 years. Thank you, God, for not letting him,
But he
glitch.
stepped down. He handed the reins over to Kamala. So that's even worse, I think.
Yeah.
But,
Gutfeld on Fox, he was on the 5, I guess it was yesterday.
he was dead on with his analogy.
Yeah, he really was. He's a little harsh. You might think, oh, that's abrasive.
No.
But I think he says what a lot of us feel.
Would you go listen? Fine. Do it on his time. Don't do it on our time. Go out literally to a pasture and pass away. He chose BBC because it stands for Biden, bury or cremate. Look, there is a reason we have hangovers. They are to remind us of the damage we do to our bodies. And what that is a political hangover. We need to see this because we can't forget the abomination of this presidency. They talk about Trump being an anomaly, and they're right. He is an anomaly. But this was an anomaly. This was a non-functioning functionary, a placeholder, a facade, a trick played on the American public. We need this refresher, and I welcome it at every opportunity to provide a comparison, to keep the scandal alive, because right now, the books, they're backfilling a false narrative about the biggest political cover-up in history. So as long as Joe emerges from the crypt with his old man smell, nobody's listening to what he's saying. They're just looking at it and going, Christ, this actually was president. But it keeps two things alive. One, the Democrats gaslit an entire country, and they must be held accountable. That's not in the past. That's in the present and the future. And the media can never be trusted again. They can never come back from this, nor should they. Joe Biden is the perfect symbol for a party and for the media, the walking dead. Yet you may see yourself in a mirror. Other people may see you, but the effects on society, you have no consequence whatsoever. When I look at MSNBC and CNN, I see dead people. Right? You have no bearing on our daily lives. This is a zombie media existing in this purgatory for their past sins, just like that guy. He's a joke. Zombie media. I like that.
I was thinking as I was listening to that, Gutfeld better be careful, and I'll tell you why. Yes, Gutfeld has the #1 late-night program right now. I don't know if you're aware of that. A lot of people think it's Kimmel or Fallon or what's his name on CBS, Stephen Colbert. I don't watch any of those three because they're ridiculously partisan. But Gutfeld, out of late-night programming, he has the #1 program. And he's got ratings and he's got power at Fox. But so did Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly, when he was over at Fox, had ratings and power, and he thought he was untouchable. But then he started to step into areas that irritated a certain group of people. Before you know it, there were accusations, scandals, and stuff, and he was gone. Look at Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson took O'Reilly's place. He was rock solid. He had great ratings. He had better ratings than Bill O'Reilly did. He was soaring. But he started to step into an area that irritated those same people, and ratings be damned, bingo. Now, I say this as a reason, Bill, because there's a similarity between what happened at CNN and MSNBC and even that situation at Fox. All of those companies depend on ratings for money, revenue. You think it would mean something to them. But when push comes to shove, CNN and MSNBC haven't changed their approach. They're still leftist loons. Ratings aren't important. They still have no ratings. And over at Fox, where they had ratings, when push came to shove, ratings be damned there too, because it interfered with a narrative, and away they went.
See, money's coming in the back door at all of these networks. And Gutfeld, he's going to suffer the same fate. All of a sudden, there's going to be accusations of sexual dalliances. Because, anybody that's conservative that has a voice, he's a pervert all of a sudden. Oh, he's done this and that. And these young women will come forward that nobody has ever heard of or knows anything about,
Yeah.
But, like I said, things come through the back door. Because what's in it for them? Why would they make this up? Money. That's the reason. Money. Put that in your head.
The good thing about Tucker and O'Reilly, for that matter, is they both have found audiences on the internet with podcasts and things like that. So they still are effective voices, but other people didn't have the same luck. I mean, they're trying to do it. By the way, Acosta's trying to do it over with his podcast. You know, he was let go by CNN, so he starts a podcast and nobody watches it. I mean, this is a guy who you would think would have some viewership advantage because he was on television for years. But there's a difference, folks. They don't realize this. There's a loyalty factor you get with conservatives that you don't get with liberals. For one thing, liberals, they don't have to follow you over to podcasts because they still got MSNBC and CNN, and they haven't changed their liberal lunatic approach. So they can get their fix over there. They don't have to look for you on the internet.
Right.
Anyway, so this thing with Biden going over to England and doing his first interview, I don't think people should really. I mean, yes, we should see it because it should be a reminder that. And I still think it was a fraudulent election. I don't know how it really happened. I'm not going to point fingers because I don't really have any answers, but I don't think it was above board. Let me just leave it at that, all right? I mean, I just look at it. You look at Joe Biden, you look at Donald Trump. One guy he was vacant even in 2020. You heard him talk in 2020, and he was eyes glazed and Mr. Mumbles. And yet you're trying to convince me that all these people decided that's our guy. We need that kind of guy in the White House. Now, you may not like Trump, but you have to admit that Trump, whether you like him or not, he's decisive and he's a thinker. He knows what the heck he's doing. You may not like what he's doing, but he has thought about it. He has a reason for doing what he's doing, and he moves along. I think he's doing a great job myself. But a lot of people, I don't understand how this could be, but they don't feel the same way, which is unfortunate. Anyway, Bill, speaking of Biden.
Uh-oh, here we go again.
It's amazing. Do you remember during the beginning of the conflict in Gaza, we decided, what they really need to resupply the people of Gaza is a pier so that we can bring stuff in from the ocean. That's right, bring supplies in and stock those people up with food and all the necessary goods that they're not getting because of the war. Pardon?
The Gaza pier.
Yeah, the Gaza pier. So Joe Biden spent a zillion of our dollars. I mean, he spent millions, hundreds of millions of dollars building this monstrosity pier that went out from a beach in Gaza. And, I mean, they put it up and the weather changed. All of a sudden, they started getting terrible waves. It broke up it was just a joke. But what wasn't a joke, and they never talked about this, is one of our people died building that damn monstrosity. And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing we didn't know about until just yesterday, that over 60 people were hurt building that pier. Think about it. It's just a pier. But over 60 people were hurt, thanks to Joe Biden.
Is that pier still there, or did it disappear? Did it go away?
I think, Bill, that the weather changed, the waters got rough, and it broke up. It literally broke up. I don't think it's been functioning for at least a year and a half.
So we spend millions and millions of dollars to build this pier for a good cause. And yet I see old rotten timber piers off the coast of California, down in the Gulf Coast and everywhere that were built over 100 years ago.
Yep.
That still weather the test of time. I mean, these boardwalks that you go out and fish on and go and get your ice cream cone and then go walk out and go, oh, looky there, Those were better than this. Biden at his best. There you go. Bumbling Biden.
You have to ask yourself this. If they spent hundreds of millions of dollars building that monstrosity, how many people had their hands in the till? Because all the money didn't go into that pier. If the pier got every penny, it would have been a golden pier, anchored in the most rock solid foundation you could get. $100 million.
Jim, come on now. That pier was built with American ingenuity and know how it was built American strong. Ask Joe.
I got to tell you, during the Civil War, the soldiers, like the Union soldiers, would be marching south and they'd come into a river. This is during the Civil War, American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Check your history books. They would go to a river and say, oh, there's no bridge here, or the bridge has been burned or blown up. Well, we got to get across this river. We got to do it soon. And they would break out pontoon boats. And they put maybe, depending upon the width of the river, 10, 12, 20 pontoons, and they'd strap them together with ropes tight and really good and solid. Then they'd cover them with planks and dirt. And all of a sudden, bingo. Off they went. They were crossing to the other side. It didn't cost them a lot of money, you know.
No.
I mean, it was 1861, 1862. And they could do it for a song, but these guys have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build a pier off a beach? Ridiculous.
You know, we might have done better just getting some amphibian landing, troop carrying,
like LSTs that they used to have.
Just bring those, bring some of those there and just
light
say,
support
load it up,
transports.
bring them in the shore.
Yep. You know, you see war movies in World War II, they would come in with these LSTs and they would hit the beach and the front would drop down like if you saw Saving Private Ryan and the soldiers would run off them. You get a few of those things going back and forth. You're right. They could be bringing supplies in that way and getting the job done.
When one is unloading, the other one's gone back and been reloaded, and they cross.
Wait a second. Wait. Are you using logic, Bill?
No, I would never do that.
Oh, good.
And that would have been much easier and simpler. Just a simple little pier at the edge of on the beach.
Yes.
And then you just have people there to go and ferry it to wherever it's got to go. Forget the weather.
Yeah. Hey, listen, what we'd like you not to forget, please tell your friends to like and share our program. Like and share our program. It's important. You'd be helping us out big time, helping our show grow. Getting back to what you were saying a little while ago about you feel this impending doom.
Impending doom.
Yes. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think it's a combination of things. We weren't under the impression, a lot of us were, that maybe they were going to have success with the war in the Ukraine, and that is turning into a mess. I think right now they're talking about the U.S. turning its back and walking away from the negotiations. So that's unfortunate. We don't see a lot of movement with Iran. We keep telling them they cannot have a nuclear bomb. They can't have it. And it doesn't seem
They keep marching forward.
Yeah. So, and now we have another war pop up in India. I think a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people feel bad about what's going on around them. And this is the challenge that Trump has right now, because he has been so positive about he can bring peace to the world. But it's not happening.
Government. Yeah, you look at all the waste in the government, and I sit there and I just wonder, and we're doing the tariff thing, which the tariffs are necessary. If we don't do tariffs, when the money runs out, when it all ends, we'll be in the next few years. We do the tariffs, we're going to hurt a little bit. But actually, I think if we just sit back and settle in and let it happen, because things are turning around, manufacturing is kicking up here. And things are getting redirected because they know he's going to do the tariffs. And it is working, but it's not going to work overnight. And if these lefty loonies, they don't care, they would rather see us crash and burn than anything else.
I think a lot of people...
That scares me.
Unrealistic or not, I think a lot of us believed that there was such a thing as the speed of Trump. You heard that term used a lot. Things moved at the speed of Trump. I mean, he likes things done yesterday. And I don't think in government, as strong and as influential as you are, I don't think it's quite that easy. I think we talked about, for example, the FBI, the corrupt FBI. there is that element in the FBI that is actively working against guys like Kash Patel right now, and Pam Bondi, too. Right now, they're working against them. There's an element that is more connected with the deep state than with this administration. And they haven't been ferreted out yet by Kash. They haven't gotten them removed, so they're still there.
Perhaps you've got two things going on. You've got the problem with government, the way it works, and the inadequacies of it, and the archaic systems that take time and are wasteful. I got a big truck outside that's unloading something.
That's okay. Can't hear it, Bill.
Okay, I can hear it, and then the room rumbles with it. But anyway, you've got that going on, and then you've still got the people inside that are hell-bent on preventing anything positive from happening. So you just have the natural, course of things. It takes a long time from everybody with their hand in the till for the bureaucracy to turn the cogs in the wheel to get it going forward. And then you've got the people that just want to disrupt. And you got to fix them both for us to move forward.
Here's the thing that's depressing, Bill, is that we expect change quickly and efficiently. We feel that if it doesn't happen during Trump's administration, it probably never, ever, ever will be fixed. There probably will never be a better time to fix our system than right now. And if the deep state is successful in blocking us, we're screwed. Simple as that.
Though, we can fix everything right now, but are we going to sit there and be complacent again to where 30, 40, 50 years from now we'll be going, it's such an old archaic system? Why can't we, bring it up to date, modernize it, and then keep it that way, have checks and balances so that we're always ahead of the curve, and how we do business, how we run our government, how we, manage our money. We should be ahead of the curve.
I heard,
and then, we got to get these disruptive players out of the system.
I heard someone say, the FAA is going to have to do it. They're going to announce today, by the way, they're going to, I guess it's going to be, it's going to be Duffy is going to announce today, Sean Duffy, a new recommended system for our air traffic controllers. And I've been hearing nothing on the news, but like it's a surprise. Our system that's in place right now is obsolete. It's hardwired, copper wired. It's they still use floppy disks. It goes back to the 80s. It's not efficient, not effective. And now we're starting to see problems like what happened in Newark a couple of days ago. And I'm hearing this over and over and over again. Now I'm hearing from networks, well, it's going to cost billions and billions of dollars and to do the whole country, and that's going to dig deep into the administration's savings that they're making. Well, let me put it to you this way, leftist loons. If they don't do the savings that they're doing now, it'll just be added on top of it. So if I got you right, leftist, you'd prefer DOGE to go away, that they continue to waste money in government, and then to add on top of that what we have to pay to the FAA to rebuild our traffic system.
Well, they just want to maintain it, but, forget about what it's going to cost to rebuild it. What's it going to cost us to repair the mess that it's making because it's so old and antiquated, let alone you can't recover human life that's lost? Look at all.
I mean, that reminds me of there are some people out there. What do they call them? Cost efficiency analysts. They'll say, "Well, we'd rather lose X amount of people in a plane crash than
acceptable losses."
Yeah, acceptable losses. I've heard that. And you want to smack them because that is such a cold-hearted way to look at things. My kids and my grandkids fly. And you want them to be in the safest system in the world. You assume that it would be.
They're talking about a bigger, meaner, faster plane that, will have 250-plus people in it. I'm like going, it's not a competition to see how many people you can cram in a phone booth.
Right.
And fly them. It's a system of what is an adequate number that we can safely transport until we get a better form of transportation, which I think, believe it or not, is probably, might be futuristic, but is probably in our grasp right now. They're working on it, I know that, and maybe there's going to be a form or a change. I'm sure when planes came around, people thought, you'll never see me get in that thing and get up in the air. Who would trust that? And when I say that, you know, I don't want to sit there and say what it is, because then somebody would sit there and go, you're crazy, Bill. But there are other things out there. There are other modes of getting you from A to B quicker, faster. Apparently it's getting safer, and I'm like going, it'll be interesting. And we have to brace the future.
I can remember they were talking about in Pittsburgh putting a maglev system in from the airport to downtown. And and this was back maybe 30 years ago. And they were talking about how fast it was and how really advanced it was, and how it would, I guess it was a system where it works on magnetics, positive and negative, and you don't really touch the rail when you're moving along. It's really a fast. You can go up to 300 miles an hour on these trains. And I was thinking, why didn't they do it? They spent, by the way, a ton of money just investigating the idea, the possibility. Somebody made some money thinking about it, but they never went about doing it.
Somebody drew a diagram, did the theory, looks good, and then
Bill,
nothing ever happened.
But why, when they talk about fixing Amtrak, they talk about rebuilding our rail system. If the maglev system is the way to go, why don't we just go to that and start moving from city to city at 300 or 400 miles an hour, as opposed to going along on these antiquated rails that have been in some form in the same spot for 150 years?
It's a push-pull system. Now, I will say that the rails, we've got to sit there, and when I say push-pull, it's the magnetic push and pull. But we need trucks and we need trains, because they're the only things. Planes too, but they can't carry the cargo that a train can carry. They can't carry the cargo that a truck can carry. Trains, trucks, we need some form or fashion of them. The electric engine is not going to deliver for them, because they can't pull the load, or we don't have the charge to keep them going.
Back in the late 60s, again in Pittsburgh, I wasn't here, wasn't in the area. They had in one of the park systems, as a demonstration piece, they had these, I forgot what they called them, elevated people movers. They literally hung off a rail, and they would go from station to station, and they went at quite a speed, and they were very effective, and they were safe. But this was almost 50 years ago, 55 years ago.
Ski lift?
They were sort of like ski lifts, Bill. Yeah, but they were made as people movers. I think they called them people movers. And somewhere along the line, somebody said, that's not efficient. Let's not do that. And they took them out, and they stopped it, and there was no more talk about it. There are a lot of different ways of moving people around our country safely other than flying. One of the things we should be talking about is maybe relieving the burden of air traffic. If you ever look at the number of planes that are flying over our country any given time, it is incredible. It is crowded up there. You may look up and say, boy, what a beautiful clear sky. No, there's a lot of planes out there, and you wonder why they don't fly into each other. And maybe while we're developing this new system, we should think of an alternative way of getting people from point A to point B quickly and safely and comfortably without putting them in an airplane.
Well, that's kind of what I alluded to without saying what it is, but, because there are options out there, futuristic options, current options. But again, I know train travel is going to get better. I know from the Northeast all the way down to Florida, it's going to get better. And the only reason I say that, I was with somebody when they were helping somebody relocate into a new home. And I said, oh, interesting career. This guy's a program director. So I was interested on that one, because program directors are in my field or your field, we're in radio or TV. Program director for the railroad. And it was funny because that movie set I was on the week before, I was in a location where the guy goes, "Yep, railroad came in, gave me $4 million for this property. There was a brand new Walgreens right behind it and, McDonald's. They were brand new. And all the buildings got bought out for about a 1 mile swath." And I said, "Well, what's that for?" The Amtrak bought it. Well, this guy was with Amtrak. And I said, "What's going on there?" "Oh, yeah, we're buying up all this land because we've got this new system we're going to do that's going to be much quicker, bullet." And I'm like going,
yeah.
So there are ththings going on
that we don't know about.
That's private money. That's corporation. No, I'm sure they got government contracts. That's probably money we don't know about. But
well, you can only hope. Hey, by the way, I want to remind you that if you haven't tried our coffee, which is not a secret, that's not a secret, Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee, do so. It's a medium blend roast of delicious coffee beans. Also, we have a decaf version if you can't have the caffeinated stuff for, health reasons, blood pressure, things like that. We got you covered. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. It's available at rightsideshop.com, rightsideshop.com. Give it to your liberal friends. They'll see the light. It's amazing. It's just that good. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee at rightsideshop.com. We also have Juan, Jose, and the Border Crossers here to sing our song.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Yes, wake up on the right side. Yeah. You don't want to wake up on the left side. It's just it doesn't work out. You'll be grumpy all day, and you'll want to demonstrate. But anyway, Bill, there's another thing going around in Washington. There's a guy named Ed Martin. I followed him for several years. He's a young man, an attorney. He's a smart guy. He seems like a real decent man, a family man, honorable guy. He is an acting U.S. attorney for D.C., and you would think he would be a shoo-in. Trump nominated him, said he'll be perfect for the job, and initially there was an interest in him, and suddenly, Bill, opposition for his appointment came not from the left, where you would assume it would come. It came from rhinos. It came from a guy, Tom Tillis. He's in North Carolina, Tom Tillis. And you would have thought he would be a staunch supporter, right? I mean, Ed Martin's a good man, God-fearing man. You would have thought he would have been right up the alley, a shoo-in. You have to ask yourself, at least I have to ask myself, what is the story with Tom Tillis? Is Tom Tillis, this is just me, but is Tom Tillis hiding something? Is there somebody who is making life uncomfortable for Tom Tillis and has said, look, you got to back away from your support of this guy Ed Martin, and you got to do it publicly or else. Let me play what happened when Trump was asked about it in a press conference yesterday.
Mr. President, Senator Tillis has come out against Ed Martin as U.S. Attorney. Do you have any response to that?
Well, it's disappointing because, I know Eddie's very talented. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. Street crime, violent crime by 25%. And people have seen, they've noticed a big difference. So I didn't know that. But if anybody voted against him, I feel very badly about it, only in the sense that in this short period of time that he's been there, crime is down 25% in Washington, D.C. But that's really up to the senators. If they, feel that way, they have to vote the way they vote. They have to follow their heart, and they have to follow their mind.
That's interesting. He supports him, but he's saying he defers to the senators. They have to follow their hearts and minds. It wasn't quite the arm squeezing that I would have preferred him to. Maybe he figures he has to be. He can't just come down heavy on everybody who disagrees with him. He has to be judicious with his, arm bending. If you know
the left is throwing out a lot of fights. You got to pick and choose your battles, and unfortunately, there are going to be people that fall to the side that they're a casualty of this political warfare that is going on. I mean, look, we got what was it, the health secretary? She is like having to step down, or she's been yanked from her nomination because apparently her credentials weren't as good as what they were touted as being, or something to that degree.
Yeah.
And so there's a change there. But Trump doesn't sit there and pull out a notepad when he gets into office and go, okay, here are all the people I vetted and I'm going to have. There's still a lot of suggestions. This happened in the first administration. It happened during Biden's administration. It happened during Obama's administration.
Look at Mike Waltz, Bill. Mike Waltz is an example. His national security advisor, and he was recommended, and he was accepted by Trump. And then a month or two later, he has that signal scandal, and next thing you know, he's out. And he's been nominated as the ambassador to the UN, but still, that's like we're not going to really throw you all the way out the door. We're going to throw you a bit of a lifeline, but it's not like being national security advisor.
Yeah, then there's Signal itself. Now, I understand that the company has suspended that for a little while they redo things, which I thought was kind of weird.
Well, they were recommended by the Biden administration as recently as December. Mm-hmm. While Biden was still in office, they were saying to their employees, use Signal if you're going to communicate. Right. And then Trump comes into office and everybody says, well, we're using Signal. That's what's pretty standard. They use Signal and they get shafted. So
yeah, well, to me, that was a setup because they were right there waiting, going, okay, it doesn't matter what they send. Just sit there and we have the back door. We'll retrieve it. And so, aha! These guys are sharing information, and that's...
Yeah. I'm just about done. Anything you want to add, Bill, before we close the door on this program?
Well, I think we ought to just close the door because you know what? Tomorrow is another day.
Oh, I like how you did that. Mm-hmm. So clever. Very good. Yes.
So no matter what we don't talk about today, if it holds the test of time, which it will, the news always does, then we shall talk it about. Yeah, there I go. It's the red pen out, folks. I shall talk about it. We shall talk about it tomorrow. See, this is another reason we need to end the show.
That's true.
Lips aren't syncing with the brain, or vice versa.
It happens. Trust me. Anyway, that's it. We'll put a fork in this.
Hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.